Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm going to walk you through some information about our reopening CPP. And throughout the meeting, if you would like to, please ask some questions. You can enter them in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen at the Q&A icon. As your questions come in, we will take them and enter them into our queue. And it may look like your question disappeared or that your question's been dismissed, but please know it has not, and it's been entered in our queue, and we will answer your questions as we go along. Carrie Elsasser, the Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education, is going to be helping me this evening with questions. So we're going to get started. So the most important thing we want you to take away with you tonight is that we are prepared to offer your students the best education in the safest environment possible. We're prepared for them, whether they are in our nest or when they're taking flight. You'll see on the screen 14 categories of guidance that we had to make sure we addressed in our reopening plan, and each of these areas were addressed. We turned in our reopening plan on July 31st, and at that time, our plan was accepted. Since then, we've had to create 2 additional plans, our remote learning plan and our testing and tracing plan. And both of those are also posted on our webpage at corningareaschools.com if you'd like to read through those documents on your own. Thank you, first of all, for filling out the commitment forms for your children this fall. Your information helped us be able to plan and to understand how many kids we would have coming in and out of our schools, and also how much transportation we needed. So you'll see on this slide in grades K through 5, about 19% of you are having your children join us remotely this summer or this fall, and 81% will be in our hybrid AB model. In grades 6 through 12, our remote learning number is just a tad lower, with 16% of our students joining us remotely and 84% in our AB model. I know you've seen this model before, but I want to make sure that we're clear about what it means for your students to be at school this fall. So if you are in the Group A cohort, you will always come into our buildings on Monday and Tuesday, and you'll be remotely learning Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. If you're in the B cohort, you will always be present in class on Thursday and Friday, and you'll be in session Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. If you chose the virtual remote model, you'll be with us all 5 days remotely. It's important to know that just because you're in your AB model and you're only there 2 days a week, that does not mean that you aren't joining your peers on the other 3 days. You are expected to attend school all 5 days at the assigned times. So what will we need from our teachers to be able to create these remote learning communities? And I will give you a second to read through those, and I'll summarize them a little bit. We want all of our students to understand, whether they're in person or remote, there will be 2-way, real-time, live interactions happening. If you are at home, you still can and will participate in your classes. We'd like our teachers to use the same curriculum for whether you attend in person or remotely. It will be the same. Communication will be the same. Grading will be consistent, again, whether you are remote or in person. And all of our services, academic intervention services, special education services, ELL services, and counseling will be provided remotely and during in-person opportunities. So what are our students' expectations? Before we go through these, I think that this will be the biggest change that you see from the spring. In the spring, when we left on March 13th, basically the state said no student should be harmed at that time. You know, we were all trying to figure out, what does this look like? What does this mean? None of us had all been sent home for a few months before. So we wanted to make sure our students had what they needed in the fastest turnaround time that we could. So students could log into Google Meets if they wanted to, but they didn't have to. If they did their work during the day, that was okay, but they could also do it in the weekends and in the evenings. It really had to fit around that family's shuffling of what the spring looked like. Moving into the fall, however, the state documents and the guidance are very different. Students are expected to attend school Monday through Friday between 8 and 3. So our remote learners will join in class with their in-class peers via Google Classroom, Google Meet every day. They'll be there 5 days a week, just like their in-class, in-person peers. They'll be able to take breaks and have movement, and the coursework will be the same. All of us will still have to follow the district's code of conduct, and that includes dress code, whether you're home or in person. And we're going to use the same technology platforms to engage in discussion, to be able to participate in class activities, and to complete your assignments. And we'd like our students to use their cameras so that we can see them, so that we know if they're getting what we're talking about, if we can see them and understand if they're getting it. One of the parts of education in person is being able to see faces and expressions and know that our kids are understanding the work that we're sharing. So attendance and chronic absenteeism is another category that we have to meet, and that's, I think, what will look very different from the spring. So in grades K through 5, attendance will be taken 1 time per day. In grades 6 through 12, attendance will be taken by class period, just like it is during a normal school year. Some alternatives for our students who have inadequate connectivity: you're going to be assigned a student ally, and that student ally is going to call you each day from home to make sure that you are there, that you have what you need to do the work that you have for the day. And students will be encouraged to call into their Google Meets. There's always a telephone number there, and they'll be able to participate by phone as well. So we're going to move into teaching and learning in grades K through 5. One of the questions that we've received most often at the elementary level is, how long will my student have to sit in front of a computer screen? And the teachers and the admin teams have worked really hard to break that out for you by grade level. So I'm going to share with you all 6 grade levels here, from kindergarten through 5th grade, and give you the opportunity to look at your child's schedule. So for example, at the kindergarten level, there'll be 2 hours of direct remote learning instruction. That time will not be consecutive. So your student, your kindergartner, is not going to be sitting for 2 hours straight. However, they will have to log in when it's their ELA block. They will have to log in when it's their math block, their science block, their special. So each day, your schedule will look exactly the same. When ELA is assigned, it'll be assigned the same time every day. So you won't be guessing at what times your students need to log in. And you can see as you move up, the time gets a little longer for the direct remote instruction. So by 5th grade, you have about 2 hours and 45 minutes of screen time. So I want to show you what our classrooms look like. On the left, you'll see a classroom that's been renovated, and on the right, a room that hasn't been renovated yet. And you'll see, what does 6-foot social distancing look like? That's 6 feet to the front and the back and both sides. And what does Wednesday look like? Wednesday is going to be a modified schedule. All of our students are going to be together virtually. So we have some opportunities for some small group instruction. We have opportunities for review and practice. Still going to have a related arts, what elementary kids call specials. Still going to have math and ELA. Some opportunities for AIS, individual support, counseling, related services, and some relationship building. We have over 900 students in our district who receive and qualify for special education services. We want all families to know that whether they're hybrid or remote, they will get those services. They may look a little different than they do in a normal setting, but Jennifer Batzing and her team are going to reach out and work with each family individually to make sure that their IEPs are being met. They're also working closely with transportation and calling families to discuss their transportation needs if that was part of their individual learning plan. And all CSE meetings for this half of the year will be held virtually through the end of January. So Carrie, before we move into 6 through 12, are there some questions we might want to go through?
Sure. Some questions regarding when will we know what cohort we're in, A or B?
Right. Actually, if you go to Parent Portal this evening, our A and B cohorts have been released. So you can put in your child's name, and on the right-hand side, it will say what cohort they're in. For those of you who have trouble logging into Parent Portal or haven't done that yet, haven't created an account yet, you can go to two places. You can go to tech support at cppmail.com and someone will get back to you, or you can call 654-2740 between the hours of 7:30 and 3:30 tomorrow, and someone will be able to help you with that.
And I know at the elementary level, elementary principals were still working on that this afternoon and are looking to try to release the official results tomorrow at 4.
Thanks, Carrie.
Questions about internet access, and I know you're going to get to technology and connectivity in a little bit, but a question about not having internet at home and what will the expectation be as far as learning in class time?
So we have a lot of strategies in place that I will share with you when we get to the equity slide. So I am going to hold off on that one until we get there.
Okay, question about two students in the same home being able to call into a Google Meet from a phone line if there's no internet service.
Yeah, so we'll help with that with some other strategies moving forward.
Majority of the rest are masks and health and safety, and I know you'll be covering those. Also, about one question about pre-K guidelines, and I can share that we're continuing our partnership with ProAction, and we'll be offering the same 4 pre-K Head Start classes that we have the last few years, and they'll be housed in 4 of our elementary buildings.
So we're going to move into teaching and learning for grades 6 through 12. So if you're in person at the middle school, one of the nicest things about this planning has been that we've been able to maintain our courses. So we've been able to maintain our middle years program curriculum. We've been able to maintain our middle school model, which means there will still be teams and houses. At the middle school level, you're going to see your students cohorted. Because all students take the same courses at the middle school level, we're able to create these cohorts. So students will be together and teachers will actually move to them. Students will be able to pre-order lunches and pick them up in the cafeteria. They will be able to eat socially distanced in spaces in classrooms and in the cafeteria. And one of the nice things about these cohorts is that they'll be able to maintain their peer relationships even though they're really only seeing each other in person 2 days a week. You'll see here what 2 classrooms look like in the middle school. Again, an older room and a renovated room. So what will middle school look like remotely? Middle school kids are going to participate whether they are remote or in the nest together. We'll use Google Meet and email and phone to connect with students. Students without internet access will receive the same resources while they're in nest. So when they leave on Tuesday or when they leave on Friday, they will have either a flash drive with materials on it that they need. They will have downloaded the academic portion that they need before they leave. And they'll possibly have some paper-based work, but we will not be looking at paper-based work like we did in the spring. So there'll be continuity of learning for all students. That's why we need them present all 5 days. You aren't going to see a repeat of information on Monday and Tuesday, and then the same information on Thursday and Friday being shared. So again, the need for students to connect when they are home. Our counselors and social workers and SEL staff are going to continue to provide related services through teletherapy and through digital resources. At the high school, the in-person model is going to look a little differently. They are going to run a 9-period day too, just like the middle school. We've added 1 minute of passing time in between. So there's a little longer time to get from class to class. Classrooms are still going to be socially distanced. Masks will be worn. Lunch again will be eaten in the cafeteria and a variety of other locations. Students at the high school, though, will move in between periods. When you hit high school, there are so many choices for students that their learning plan is individualized. So for example, the courses I would take as a sophomore would not necessarily be the exact same courses as another sophomore in our grade. They're very individualized. So the opportunity to move, to be able to keep that in place is something that we had to meet. And again, we were able to maintain our program. We maintained our IB program, SUPA, ACE, and AP programs. We wanted our students to still have the opportunities to earn some credit toward college. We also want our students that are not going to college to be able to have their classes as well, their choice as well. So we were able to maintain all of our electives into the school year. Their remote learning is going to look very similar to the middle school. They need to be engaged, they need to be present. There's a daily class schedule to follow, attendance will be taken. It'll be new instruction each day or reinforcement of practices. And our special education services will still happen, again, whether we're in person or virtual. So here's the high school look. Wanted to show you a room prior to March and what a room would look like this fall. So you can see we're cutting our population almost into a third. So what does Wednesday look like for a middle school or a high school student? It actually is the reverse of an elementary schedule. So our teachers will be meeting in the morning, and that time will be used to prepare for those students who are going home, the students who will be virtual. What do they need before they leave on Tuesdays and Fridays? And the 9-period schedule will still run starting at 10:30, but classes will be a little shorter on Wednesday, 25 minutes. And again, attendance will be taken each class period. So we also have to make sure that our students get their related services such as OT, PT, speech, and counseling, and they're going to be provided in both models. Google Meet will be the platform for teletherapy if you are on the remote learning plan. And students will see a combination of push in and pull out services. One of the things we would be remiss not to plan for is our students' social emotional wellness. We have students who have needed so much to be connected with their peers and with their teachers over the last few months that we've stayed connected. Our school counselors, our school social workers, some teachers and TAs, they've stayed connected to kids over this time. So we'll be ready for those kids to return, and we're very proud of the fact that we'll even be able to have our students back for 2 days. We know, though, at the other side of this, that there are students who are going to be equally anxious about returning. They are going to have some fears. So we're working with our teachers and our staff on some strategies to integrate some social emotional learning and relationship strengthening strategies right into their classrooms. So before we go into tech and connectivity, are there any more learning questions, teaching learning questions, Carrie?
Some questions about the startup days, and I can share that at the elementary level, our A cohort will begin on September 10th in person, and our B cohort will begin on September 11th in person. And on Monday, September 14th, it'll be the first full week for our A, B, and C cohorts. So C will join for the first time on the 14th, and we'll start our first full week of instruction for all cohorts on the 14th. We have secondary remote learners will begin alongside their peers on September 10th.
At the 6th through 12th grade level, students will in the 6th grade and 9th grade actually will come on September 9th. Middle school students in the A and high school students in the A cohort will come on September 10th, and students in the B cohort will come on September 11th. And we will send home some information with all of these dates on it so that you have those as well. We're very proud to be still able to offer our 6th and 9th grade only days so that those students have some time in the building before their other classmates and peers come.
Okay, a question about elementary drop-off. How will drop-off and pickup of children who are not using our bus services work for elementary? And I know this is going to be a little bit different at each of the 6 elementary schools, and building principals will be communicating out those specifics shortly.
So bus drop off and pickup is going to happen very similarly to the way it does now. You will be able to drop off and pick up a little earlier and a little later than normal so that we can help get traffic through. All right, I'm going to keep moving now with technology and connectivity. So I just wanted to again say thank you for filling out the commitment forms. This is how useful this information is. You can see here for grades K through 5 what each building has in terms of connectivity, red being no service, purple being cell service only, yellow being weak, and green being good. And at the 6 through 12 level, high school, the high school learning center and the middle school numbers. What we did with this information and what Jerry Deeg was able to help us with, he was able to take all of your information and create kind of a scatter plot for us across our district. Remember, we're about 236 square miles. So for us, knowing this information, knowing where our students are and what areas need the internet help has helped us in working with our community partners to see what we can do to help our families who don't have internet access. So how are we addressing this? We are looking into hotspots with Verizon and T-Mobile. They've been purchased. We're working with families on an as-needed basis to see if those work. We're also working with a lot of our community partners for public Wi-Fi, churches, libraries, even ball fields out in Lindley, families and campgrounds who have said, please come use our Wi-Fi. We'll work with families individually. We'll give them our Wi-Fi passwords. So it's really been nice to see our community come together around this. There are 2 other organizations working on how to help families with internet connectivity as well. And as soon as we have details from them, we'll be able to share those out with our families. Again, this is where that student learning ally comes into place. They'll be able to call your family, call your student, check in with them for attendance purposes, but also to make sure, do they need to hear from an individual teacher? Do they need some additional support with a specific skill that they're working on? So we will continue to work with our families individually. Another thing that we need to make sure our families and students have is food. So we're going to continue our at-home delivery. Whether you're in school or out of school, you will be able to have breakfast and lunch delivered each day. There's a 3-meal pack and a 5-meal pack that you'll be able to choose. Our free and reduced lunch forms are going to be on the website, and applications will be mailed home. I know you may think it's funny to see Taco Day at the bottom of this page, but really, when we got feedback back from families and from students, that was something that was very important to them. What if I'm in the B cohort? I'll never have Taco Tuesday. So our food director was able to make sure that there's that option on whether you're an A cohort student or a B cohort student. So in terms of transportation, like I said, tomorrow was our target for our cohort groups. It sounds like elementary will still be released then, and middle school and high school AB cohorts are out this evening. It's important for you to understand how those students were placed in those cohorts. And the first layer of this was transportation. And I put we put a picture in here so that you can see when you had the opportunity for a 66 or 72 passenger bus, and you have to cut that into a third by only allowing 1 student per seat to meet that 6-foot distancing. If I myself am assigned to seat 2B in the morning and I want to go somewhere else in the afternoon, then my seat 2B sits open in the afternoon, and the bus that I want to get on already has a student sitting in seat 2B. So that before pickup, or the morning pickup and afternoon drop-off times, or not times, but addresses, were really important for us to have. It isn't how we like to operate. It isn't how we normally work with our families. And in this situation, it's a must for us to be able to get kids to and from school. So having 1 location for each right now is a driver about which cohort you are going to be in. Our second cohort, or our second level of determining cohorts, was how many actual seats do we have in school? So whether you're a walker or your parents were going to drive you to school for this year, we still had to figure out how many chairs we had open once you got to school. So that was the second level, second layer of determining who was in the A cohort and who was in a B. Now that those numbers are released, each building principal may have some flexibility, but if you need transportation, then Mr. Eccleston, our Director of Transportation, will have to let you know really if there's an opportunity for any adjustment to the A or B group. But we will work on that if we can. Before we move into facilities and cleaning procedures, how about some questions, Carrie? I know you were having a little trouble with the reverb. How are we doing?
I think we're okay now.
Okay, great.
Question about, is anyone working with our local service providers to see if they can run intranet?
Yeah, so actually there are people outside of us that are working on that. So it isn't something necessarily that the school district can take on, but there are two groups, the Southern Tier Network, they are working on that with us, and another group associated with the Community Foundation is always also working on what can we do with our families and local providers. So we are continuing to work on that with them. They are directing that work, but we are making sure that they know what the needs are and where the needs are based on your information from the commitment letter.
Okay, a question about holidays and our schedule. How does the AB schedule work with calendar days? Example, Columbus Day, Veterans Day, etc.
So our district calendar was approved. We will follow our normal calendar. You can find that calendar on the website. We're trying to make one more adjustment to it, so it may be posted tomorrow. If not, it will be posted by Monday. And that is the calendar we will follow. So holidays, we have holidays. We're going to take our holidays. We're going to take our much needed breaks when they're on the calendar. And we're going to move forward with our 180 days as planned.
Okay, a question regarding tech support. How will tech support be handled virtually?
So that email address and phone number that I gave you earlier in the presentation, that's really how you're going to connect if you have a tech issue. So I'm going to give it to you one more time this evening, and then we'll make sure that it's shared out in our FAQ. It's techsupport@cppmail.com, and the phone number is 654-2740.
Okay, question relative to cohorts. Can children that live next door to one another and carpool to school together be switched to the same AB cohort or A or B cohort?
So that will all be determined by space. Right now, those AB cohorts were vetted through transportation, and they were vetted through your child's schedule at school. So you'll need to reach out directly to the principal in the building to see if they have flexibility in their classroom space.
Okay, a question relative to childcare and logging into classes. If our child is at a childcare center and for some reason does not get logged in on the online times, how will that work for attendance and participation? Will there be some grace with this in the beginning as long as it's not a chronic issue?
So I'm actually meeting with the child care providers in our area. We've had a meeting a week and a half ago, and we have another one set up for the end of this coming week. We are working with them to make sure they understand how to log on through Google Classroom, what they need to know for each of our levels of kids that they may have working with them. So we are going to work with them. Attendance will be taken every day. We're still going to follow our normal attendance procedures. So if something happens and you need to provide a note, we can still provide notes. If you have doctor's appointments, you can still provide notes. You can email the attendance offices in your building. So we're going to work through different scenarios with families. But like you said, that chronic absenteeism, we'd still have to follow that. So there's a letter that's initiated at a 5-day, a 10-day, a 15-day. So we will continue to monitor the families that are having trouble with attendance.
Question relative to student behavior during Google Meets. Will there be some more control of this, the students that are attending virtually?
So we are going to follow our code of conduct, whether you're in person or whether you're virtually. And our deans and our school administrators and teachers are still going to work with our students as if they were all in person. Our teachers have strategies for redirection. And if those aren't working, then it moves to the next level, and we'll make sure that families are connected and contacted if something is happening in the remote learning community and that's not happening in person.
Question relative to the Wednesday schedule. Does this mean that Wednesday ends at noon for our students?
Carrie, you want to talk about elementary a little bit?
Sure. For the elementary level, Wednesday classes go until noon. It'll be a variety of supports that day. work with our school counselors, our social workers, related arts teachers, AIS support. So it'll look a little bit differently than Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday. It's really a day for all of those supports, and there will be scheduled Google Meets as well, but they will end right around noon unless we have some services in the afternoon. The afternoon time at the elementary is going to be used for time with our teachers for planning. This is an unprecedented time, and it's some work for our teachers to collaborate with one another and across the grade levels across the 6 buildings. Secondary schedule looks a little bit differently. It's basically flipped at the secondary level, where their time is in the morning and classes will be in the afternoon, later morning and afternoon.
Yeah, so they'll go from 10:30 to 3. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move into cleaning procedures and health and safety. So right now our cleaning procedures are, we are following the Department of Health, the New York State Department of Health guidelines and the New York State Education Department guidelines, which means that cleaning has to be a continual process. So this is work that will start in the morning and run through the evenings, almost like a 24-hour cycle. Students are not allowed to participate in cleaning, so students will not be asked to do that. However, students will have some training on how to wear their masks appropriately, hand washing, frequency of hand washing, only to use their own materials, to make sure they're not within that 6-foot distancing. So there'll be training for them, but they won't be helping with their actual cleaning of spaces. Teachers will not be asked to clean as well. However, if teachers want to have supplies provided for them upon request, we will make sure that they have them in their rooms. I'm going to talk about positive cases later in terms of health and safety, but in terms of cleaning, if there is a positive case in one of our buildings, the response will be to let that space sit empty for 24 hours before any cleaning begins. And then after that, cleaning will take place. At a minimum, that space will be closed for 72 hours, but our Department of Health, Steuben County Department of Health, will let us know when the space can reopen. We will not determine that on our own. We will be working with the Department of Health closely, and they will let us know when we can do that. Bill Pierce, our Assistant Superintendent for Buildings and Grounds and Operations, he's been able to secure some airless disinfectant sprayers, which will help us with efficiency and time. So this portion of the presentation is really one of the hardest to wrap your heads around. You're going to have questions about this when this presentation is over, as you're trying to figure out scenarios. So I want to make sure that you know you can continue to ask questions about this. But right now, the Department of Health, New York State Department of Health, says that if you have any of these 11 symptoms, any of them, that you have to have these 3 things to return to school. You have to have written clearance from a doctor, a negative COVID test, and a resolution for your symptoms. So this is a hard one. If I am a migraine sufferer, I've had migraines for 10 years and I'm a migraine sufferer. My nurse knows it, my primary care physician knows it. At this time, the guidance from New York State Department of Health says that does not matter, that I still need these 3 things: written clearance from a doctor, a negative COVID test, and a resolution for the symptoms. We are hoping that this changes a little bit. We're hoping that the clinical guidance that's going to be released early next week allows some flexibility for physicians to make this determination. If they know that their patient has allergies, that they would be able to say this is allergy related. Right now, they do not have that flexibility, and we have to follow the guidance that was given to us. So if you have any of these symptoms at school, you need these 3 things to return: written clearance, a negative COVID test, and a resolution of the symptoms. So if there is a positive test in one of our buildings, testing will not be done by us. We are not a testing facility, and we are not physicians. So COVID-19 testing will be handled through your primary care physician. If you don't have one, the Department of Health will determine which facility you should go to get tested. From there, that will trigger a tracing procedure, and we will work with the Department of Health on names, on contacts. However, we will not contact families and let them know about the interactions about the tracing. The Department of Health will contact families directly. HIPAA laws for us will be enforced, so we will not be announcing to families or to our staff what student or staff may have been found as a positive COVID-19 case. In addition, that triggers your closure. So we work with the Department of Health on how long we need to be closed. They'll determine if it has to be a classroom after they finish their testing and tracing. They'll determine whether it's a whole building, and they will determine whether it's a whole district. They'll also determine the amount of time, whether it's 72 hours up to 15 days. So how can you help us at home? What do we need you to do before you send your kids to school in the AB model? Each day, we have to fill out a health screening as employees to come in, and you can see that screening on the left-hand side of the screen. If you answer no to all of those questions, that green light is going to come on that's on the right-hand side of the screen that says go. And that screener is on our SchoolPoint app. So we're looking for a very similar procedure for families before you send your kids to school. You're going to answer these questions for us and submit them. The second level of screening will happen when you get to school. When you walk in the door, there will be a temperature check. We're using thermal scanners for a temperature check. It's almost like a fist bump. You're going to put out your hand, a light will come on that says green, you're good to go, or red, right now that you have a temperature over 100.0. At that time, we're just going to ask you to come to a space, an isolation space, and we're going to let you sit for 5 minutes. We want to make sure that that temperature is accurate, making sure that it wasn't temperature outside related or activity related before coming. So we'll give you that second opportunity of screening there. And our nurses will then contact families and contact for transportation home that day. If there is a fever of over 100.0 or any of those 11 symptoms are active. In terms of face masks, this is probably the second most asked question that we've had. Face masks must be worn at all times on the bus. There is no time on the bus where a face mask can be taken off. Face masks must also be worn in our buildings. We have to maintain 6-foot social distancing requirements at all times. There's really in the guidance only 2 times that it says you could take off your mask at school, and that is at lunchtime once you're seated and during direct instruction. But let me explain direct instruction so you understand a little more what that looks like. So in your classroom, if I'm the teacher and I'm at the front of the room and all of my students are seated and I am not going to move from the front of the room, students can take their masks off, and so can the instructor. If, however, the teacher or a teaching assistant are moving up and down the aisles of the classroom, then they're not maintaining the 6-foot distance, which means masks have to be on. It'll be really important for our teachers and our teaching assistants to help with that. This is when you can take off your mask. Another question is, can me as a staff member just wear it all the time? Absolutely, you can wear it all the time. What's acceptable right now in terms of face masks? They can be cloth-based, homemade, sewn, quick cut, bandanas, gaiters, surgical masks. They have to cover the mouth and the nose. And we're creating training videos around this. Our head nurse and the health and safety team, along with our assistant superintendent for personnel, who's in charge in health and safety, they are creating not only guidelines, but also videos for us to use for training for staff and students. Medical exemptions for being able to be permitted not to wear a mask, they will be very far and few between. If a physician writes this note, it will come to school with us, but it will also have to be vetted by our district physician and our head nurse. So you will not see very many students at all without a face mask on. So Carrie, let's start there and talk about some health and safety questions.
Sure. The first one, is the nurse's office at the Corning Painted Post High School the designated sick or screening location? And if so, will there be a separate location for storage or dispensation of needed meds for well children?
So in each building, there's been an isolation station chosen that is not the nurse's office. So the nurse's office will still run as a whole space, and there will be an additional isolation space.
Okay. Health and safety, I know that continual cleaning will be taking place, but can students bring their own hand sanitizer and wipes for their desk or lunch table?
So cleaning supplies for students are actually listed in the guidance as something that they cannot bring to school.
Unmasking, will activities that require unmasking, such as swimming, be avoided?
So right now, actually, swimming is not an activity that can take place. So that won't happen. In band and chorus, there will be times when students can remove their masks to play their instruments. In those cases, those 6-foot distancing is not the requirement. It's actually 12 feet of distance. So you will see band and chorus looking a little differently, obviously, than in the past. Actually, not a little differently, a lot different, in which will be more small group oriented so that we can meet the 12-foot distancing requirement.
Okay, a teaching and learning question on paper packets. Can we request paper packets that cover the virtual days?
So we will not be using paper packets like we did in the spring this year. Everything will, because we are a one-to-one district, every student will have a device. So information and work will come to you through flash drive, downloaded materials before you leave. Of course, there will still be paper, but there will not be those stacks of paper packets like normal. Not normal, but like we were in the spring.
Thank you. Sixth grade schedules. When and how will we get the sixth grade schedule? And the answer I have here is at the secondary level, materials will be mailed home next week regarding schedule. And at the elementary level, I know that teacher names will be going home Friday, August 28th. And with those names will be a specific schedule that shows the off-site learning times across K through 5.
So also in terms of that 6th grade only day and 9th grade only day, the time is going to be shorter than a normal day. It will probably be around 8 to 1, but again, you'll get that finalized schedule soon.
Okay, a question relative to masks. How will we prepare for a special needs middle school student that has to wear a mask all day, that's wearing a mask all day?
So it'll be important for you as a family to reach out to Jennifer Batzing and her team, and they can talk through some strategies with you about how to practice mask wearing ahead of time, or what you would need in terms of an exemption for that if it came to that.
I believe this is an elementary question relative to the first days for the first week. That first week, the 10th is a Thursday, and it will be our students that are in the A cohort in person, and the next day is a Friday, which will be our B students in person. And then our first full week starts the 14th, and all students will be in 5 days that week, whether it's in person or the remote learning. Question relative to hand sanitizer. Are students allowed to bring their own? I think we already answered that one. Cleaning. Will the classrooms at the high school be cleaned in between classes?
So right now, the guidance does not state that classrooms have to be cleaned between every use. Same as the bathrooms do not have to be cleaned between every use. However, we are going to do continual cleaning. So Mr. Pierce and his team of custodians, they are going to make sure that these rooms are being hit often. But we cannot guarantee that it will be between every single class period.
Question relative to music and related arts. Will elementary related arts also be virtual, and will we be provided materials to complete projects? I can share that at the elementary level, yes, you will have, students will have related arts all 5 days, whether it's remote or in person. That'll be on a 4 to 5 week rotation, the in-person related arts. And as far as provided materials, I know that many of our related arts teachers are working on some supply bags to send home with families so that those activities can be completed at home and that you'll have some supplies for that. Extracurriculars. Is it okay to do outside extracurricular activities such as gymnastics, the youth center, etc.?
So right now, the guidance from New York State is, again, not allowing sports at this time. So I'll cover sports first. Right now, they're saying that athletic or sports can happen beginning September 21st. We have fall registration dates ready for the end of August, and students have had their physicals, athletes have had their physicals this summer. However, we are not certain that that will be an approved start time, but right now, August or September 21st is the date when athletics could happen in the fall. In terms of extracurricular activities, it's all going to be based on if we can maintain that 6-foot distancing. For example, intramurals right now are not on the table. However, if you had a book club or our African American club, clubs that students could social distance in, we may be able to offer those. We have a committee that's working on that right now. So right now we don't have offerings out, but when school starts on September 10th, we'll have some options out for extracurriculars.
Question relative to other districts in New York. I've heard other New York school districts have different guidelines for students and teachers with symptoms and sending them home. For instance, a person would be sent home only with multiple symptoms versus one. Do we know why there is such a variance between New York districts?
So for us, we didn't choose this. We are following the Steuben County Department of Health regulations and how they've worked with New York State Department of Health. And in the New York State Department of Health, it says very clearly any symptom. So it doesn't say that you have to have a combination of 2 or 3. It says any symptom. So right now, we are following New York State's Department of Health guideline and Steuben County's Department of Health guidelines. These are not choices that we make. These are not options for us. If we want to be able to open, which we do for our kids, we have to follow these. Again, we're really hoping that the clinical guidance that's offered next week offers some leniency to our primary care physicians in terms of letting us know if a student or staff need the COVID test or not.
Some questions relative to COVID versus the common cold and some other related illnesses. Symptoms are very similar to common cold. How will we differentiate COVID-19 or the common cold?
Yeah. And I think, you know, all the points that you're bringing up about these allergies, headaches, common colds, all of these things, I'm with you. I don't understand how they can trigger a COVID test either. But right now, the Department of Health says that those are the guidelines that we have to follow. I hope, again, that a primary care physician can be the one that determines that. However, I also think it's really important to remember that the safety of our staff and students is very important. And if a symptom of COVID can also look like a common cold symptom, then we have to make sure that it's not COVID. So we really just need to make sure that we're following the guidelines from the Department of Health so that we can stay open for our students.
We have a student who is scheduled to take advanced fitness in high school. Will this still be offered, and how will it be taught?
So the course, I believe, is still going to run. I do think that that will be an individual conversation with the teacher. I don't want to push you off with your question, but I do think that's more of a one-to-one question that we'll have to address. So I'll make sure that I work with Mrs. Sheehan and the PE teachers to make sure we can have a response to that for our FAQ.
Okay, a question relative to elementary struggles. If an elementary age student is struggling with computers, as they did in the spring, can the online material be provided with paper packets? Can this be left up to the teacher? I can share the answer on that. We are really looking to do the same thing across the district, across each grade level. We are also working, though, to make sure that our in-person time with students provides time to give really good instruction on how to use the Chromebook, what to do when you're having trouble with the Chromebook, and just make sure that our kids are trained. We didn't have that opportunity when we were put out in March, and we know that that's a priority when we come back in September to work with all of our kids. And for our remote learners, there will definitely be time to give them training too on how to operate that Chromebook from home.
So we have about 2 minutes left, but I want to move on to one other area. I want to make sure that families have this phone number and email address. We know that childcare feels completely insurmountable right now. We want to make sure that we're offering help where we can. Like I said, I'm meeting with childcare providers to make sure they understand our systems and our schedules. We're also understanding where they're coming from in terms of their needs. So if you use this phone number, an extension, or this email address, they can help you locate childcare facilities in our area that still have openings. So I wanted to make sure that you have this information. And I also want to make sure that we've talked about a few of these things. So I want to make sure that you also know that we're planning to offer some family professional development opportunities. So families would be able to log on and learn from our technology specialist. What does it look like? What does Google Classroom look like? What is it going to look like on screen for my student who's at home, or my student who may be calling in, or my student right now who does not have internet or connectivity? What is it going to look like? So those opportunities will be shared soon. And again, I mentioned our health and safety materials. Those videos and posters and trainings will be out for students and staff at the beginning of the school year. And we're really going to focus on those things before we get into our instruction in our AB cycle. So at this point, I'm not gonna take any additional questions, but any questions that are still in there, Carrie, I wanna make sure that we can answer before people go.
Sure. A question relative to Chromebooks. How do we get a Chromebook and where can I pick up the Chromebook?
Great question. So each building has distribution dates. So you will be getting them from your building principal, and they will talk about when you can come and pick up, but also if you had a device, if you are having problems with it, you'll be able to bring that in as well, and we'll get some tech support for you during that time.
Quick question about specials or related arts. Is opting out of specials an option for students? Working parents will struggle to complete essential coursework with elementary aged kids, math, reading, and ELA. If this isn't optional, will the specials assignments be reduced from the time commitment?
So for us, it's really important for us to have like a balanced education. Those specials, when I met with a group of 26 students in grades 5 through 12, they were very important parts of their education. They were described by a 5th grader to me as school can be overwhelming and stressful sometimes, and my special is what allows me to feel engaged, but also to feel positive and have a break from the curriculum portion of the day, such as math and ELA. So we strive to make sure that our students are still going to be able to have those opportunities.
I think we hit almost all of them, Michelle.
All right. So thank you so much for coming today. Remember that you can use our ask@cpp.com email at any time, and we'll get back to you with answers. We're going to be releasing an FAQ from all 3 of these parent town hall meetings tomorrow. Please just keep asking us questions so that we have the opportunity to respond, and also to be proactively solving problems before school begins in just a few short weeks. We appreciate your support, and we cannot wait to have your students back in our nests. Have a good evening.